I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud, and she must be looking down on this. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black?
Good morning. All too often, people think the African American community is the largest racial minority group in the United States. Simply put, they are not. That number one slot belongs to the Hispanic and Latina population in the U.S. But according to the 2010 census, the fastest growing minority in the United States are Asian Americans. Their estimated population, 17.3 million, of which more than 11 million will be eligible to vote this year. They are also the only major racial or ethnic group in which naturalized citizens, rather than U.S. born, make up a majority of eligible voters, according to the Pew Research Center. And listen to this. From 2000 to 2020, the number of Asian American eligible voters more than doubled, growing by 139%. So today, on our continuing Inside Michigan's African American Vote series, we shine our spotlight on the Keshamouni family from Canton, Michigan. They are proud Indian Americans who in a very real sense represent the changing and racially diverse face of America's population and eligible electorate. We'll begin with their personal story, followed by some insight into Michigan voting from Secretary of State JOCELYN BENSON. I'm Chuck Stokes. Thank you for joining us today on the Spotlight Special. Venkat, let me start with you and just sort of walk us through this journey from India to the United States. How did it all begin?
Thanks, Chuck, for having us. I'm a PhD, and I came here to continue my postdoctoral studies in USA. So we came here in 1996, both me and my wife Shamala, and then that's how we started our family, starting in Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana, and then moving to Metro Detroit area, and we've been living here from past 18 to 20 years now, and started the family here, and both Annie and Abhi were born here.
So both sons were born here in the United States, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Annie was born in Detroit and Abhi was born in Southfield.
All right. Are you and your husband, Shamala, are you from the same area of India? How did you all meet?
Yeah, we met in India. Our parents introduced us. We had an arranged marriage, and we're from the same region. We're from Andhra Pradesh. Now the state is called Telangana, but yes, we're from there.
Okay. Shamala, you have what may become a very famous name if Joe Biden wins and becomes the next president, and Kamala Harris becomes the next vice president. Her mother's name is spelled exactly like yours, correct?
It is. I do share that name. In fact, it's been quite the conversation piece with my friends, and even when she was running for primaries, my friends would come up to me and say, "Hey, do you know you have Kamala's mom's name?" I was like, I do know that. Now you'll get to say it right.
Describe for me, for a second before we get into all the voting stuff, when you heard that Kamala Harris was going to be the vice presidential candidate with Joe Biden. That made history. But what did it mean to your family, or did it mean anything in particular? Anybody can take that.
For me, I think it was a pinnacle of representation for us. Because as Indian people, it's kind of tough to see ourselves in the TV and in the media as much as other people do. And I think it was just like this, this pinnacle of representation to see someone that looks like us, or this kind of, to be at the literal, almost the second highest seat in this country. So
it felt just awesome to to keep hearing the name Kamala all the time, it's really nice. And I always want to correct people's pronunciation when they say her name. And I was like, I felt incredible that she was chosen as the running mate.
You had been in the country for how long before you actually became citizens?
20 years.
20 years. Okay, so there are going to be people out there that say, what took you so long?
That's a very good question. So our family has always been very political junkies, you can say. We constantly talk about politics, both back home in India as well as here. And it never occurred to us really that, you know, whether we were being, you know, permanent residents for a long time. But we never made the next step of taking the citizenship for not any particular reason, but it never occurred to us that would make a big difference. Especially that changed in last 4 years, where I'm not more worried about the policies or anything like that, but I'm more worried about the rhetoric that is coming out these days. And I'm more worried about my kids who are growing up in this rhetoric where people cannot even with civility discuss the difference of their opinions. So I thought, you know, this is the time we should make the next step and help and teach our kids that, you know, that the best way to put our word forward is a civil discussion, not, you know, this overblown partisan rhetoric. So that's what we decided, you know, just we will make the next step and become citizens.
So for you and your wife, this will be the first time that you will vote in a presidential election now that you're citizens? Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
That is correct.
You're pretty excited about this?
Yes, very.
I'm very excited, and I am nervous about it.
Why are you nervous?
Well, there is, I obviously have my favorites. I really want my vote to mean something. And with everything that's going on with COVID, you know, I want to make sure that my vote counts. So I'm anxious, I'm excited, and I want it to mean something.
Avinod, you also got motivated, I think, in all of this by watching Trevor Noah. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. So our nightly routine before we go to bed is to sit down as a family and we watch Trevor Noah every night. And one of the days he started advertising about working the polls, and he said you could be as young as 16. I was like, that's a great opportunity. So I went onto their website, the Power of the Polls website, and I signed up there, and it turned out I was in our state at 16 to be able to work the polls. So yeah, I signed up and I was contacted within a few days, and the whole process kind of started from there.
What was that process like? Because you did it in the primary election. That was the first time, correct?
Yes, it was. So I signed up on the website, and then I got a confirmation email maybe a couple days later, and then I was called by the city of Detroit another 2 days after that to sign up for poll worker training, and also talking about getting COVID tested to be able to work the polls.
Absolutely. All right, you can't quite vote yet, but you're doing those things leading up to it, and it'll be another year or so before you can vote, correct?
Yeah, I can vote in April. That's when I turn 18.
In April. All right. And you, Ruth, you voted, once before or a couple times now at age 20?
Yeah, I voted in the midterm elections in 2018, and then the primaries, and this will be my third one. Yeah.
All right, so you're becoming a pro now at this.
You can say that.
Are you pretty excited over this election?
I think I share the same sentiment as my mom. I'm really excited to be participating in my first presidential election. But again, the atmosphere surrounding, you know, the COVID pandemic and the mail-in ballots and all that stuff is a little nerve-wracking in terms of whether our votes are going to mean something or not. So I think I share that sentiment with my mom.
Your dad mentioned earlier, and anyone can answer this, that the tenor and tone of this election has been a concern. As an Indian American family here in the United States, do any of you, how are you feeling? Are you feeling wanted? Are you feeling a key part of the fabric of America, or are you feeling tension because of all of this discourse?
I mean, the tension is definitely there. And as a person of color, when I walk into a room of people that don't identify that way, I notice it a lot more than I used to before 2016. So I think the political climate has obviously changed. But I think personally, I feel like I'm gonna make myself a part of this fabric, the fabric of this country, because I was born here. That you can't do anything else about that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my country too. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Right.
You know, I remember one thing when we first came in 1996. The first election we saw was Bill Clinton's election in 1996. When I first came from India, and we just had our national elections there before we moved here. So I was so impressed by the whole, you know, how smoothly the elections things goes here. You know, we sat down there when the election counting goes on, which used to be a big party. We used to sit all night long to get the results done. Here, I came from work on the elections day and turn on the TV. By the time the elections are already called, Bill Clinton was the president. It was over in an hour. So I was thinking, wow, this is amazing how fast and quick and civilly the whole thing is done. So I used to, whenever I call my parents and my family back home, I used to tell people about how smoothly and how civilly the elections goes on here. Now they call me and ask me the same questions, like what the heck is going on in the United States? People are going, you know, the things that they would never imagine to hear from, you know, a higher office like a president, you know, coming up every day with this crazy stuff. Even as a scientist, my biggest fear is people even start debating, questioning the science, the facts, which we always debate about the interpretation of the fact, but never the facts itself. So that is a big difference and concern I've seen in the last 20 years since I was here.
Do any of you feel as though in the world stage, the United States is losing respect from other countries because of what has happened here over the last 10 years, 5 years, however far you want to go back, and because of all of this partisan bickering going on in America?
Absolutely. That is a big concern. You know, we are losing our stand in international stage, especially our word. Or what does it mean when United States gives a word? It only restricts to for 4 years when the president is there, and after that it means nothing. So that is a big concern in terms of the world stage. When United States gives a word, it should be, you know, set in stone in terms of whoever it is. We can have our own bickering, but when it comes out, when it go out and sign something on behalf of the United States, it should mean something.
Sure.
But that is a big concern with how much people will respect that.
Shamila, I'm going to direct this to you, but anybody can answer it. The Indian American community is the fastest growing group of color in the United States. Do you feel that your family is probably a perfect example of the new American voter and what America is moving towards, and that this is going to be the future of America, whether people like it or not?
I hope so. I definitely hope that the Indian American community takes an active role in ensuring that there is representation and having our voice heard, whether it's making your opinions known, where you stand, how we value our family. And I think, you know, one of the most important things in our culture is education all around. So it's really important for me as someone who is an immigrant to this country, that my children, my community, understands how important education, and also making sure that we are part of the fabric of this community. So if I think about that a little bit deeper, I really want my children to be no different than anyone else, have the same, liberties and standing in the community. And for that, we all have to work for it. We have this democracy and the philosophy behind it. And I've been struggling over the past few years, and to be honest, extremely frustrated that, there is so much disrespect for someone who doesn't look like how, whether if you're from a different community, we should be able to respect that. And over the past few years, I see that diminishing, and it's become so easy, whether it's on Facebook or whatever sort of forum it is, it's become easy to belittle someone else because they don't look like us, or for that matter. So, but I want my children to understand that it's important to participate in the democracy, to keep that surviving and maintained with respect. Means everybody has to pitch in and do their part. Because if we don't do that, then, we can't sit on the sidelines and complain about things not turning out the way
if you don't participate in the civic process. Right. All right.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give your young sons the last word because they are indeed the future of this country. What is it the two of you want from this country and want of yourselves?
For the most part, I just want respect to be given to all groups, regardless of opinion on political issues or anything related to that. People have to be able to sit across from even opposite sides of the aisle and have a civilized discussion with each other, and not call each other's names and not disrespect each other based on the color of their skin, based on their political views, based on their religion, and just to have a good conversation. And at the end of the day, even if you don't completely agree on all issues, that you understand each other's points and you respect each other's points. And that's all that we as a country can ask for.
All right. And your brother?
Yeah. For me, I think one thing we need to remind ourselves of, and I think we need to strive to remind the people that make decisions for us, is that they are serving us as people. The government is intended to make our lives better. We don't serve the government. I think that's one thing that I think we need to remember in terms of when we're voting, we should be voting in our specific interests, you know what I mean, that help everybody out. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your opinions, and best of luck as you head to the polls in just a couple of weeks. And for those of you who will be voting for the very first time, congratulations. And for the youngest there, you've got a little ways to go, but April will roll around quicker than you realize.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Chuck. I appreciate it.
How many more poll workers could you use across this state, and how are you going to get them?
Well, we started recruiting poll workers back in May through our statewide Democracy MVP program. And extraordinarily, I learned this week that we have recruited 26,000 new election workers. People all across the state have signed up to say, I want to help make sure our elections are secure. And so in most communities, they have met their goal, and we're now focused on training those new election workers and preparing them to do their jobs. But there are still a few communities around the state where we want to make sure that we recruit a few extra dozen and get them placed. So it's not too late to sign up if you're interested at michigan.gov/democracymvp.
You have enough money to be able to pay all these poll workers?
Thanks to the Federal CARES Act, we've been able to provide additional funding for our election workers, and many local jurisdictions have gotten additional funds for that as well.
We know that there are a record number of immigrants coming into the country and voting perhaps for the first time. Some groups are really expanding their voice and making their voice heard. Talk a little bit about what the future of this country looks like in terms of the type of voters that we're going to see and how that just folds itself into the fabric of this country.
Well, that's a great observation and question, Chuck, because the younger generation of voters is among the most diverse generation in our country's history. I mean, our focus is making sure that every eligible citizen has the ability to vote and have their voice heard, but also that they know how important it is, whether it's a new right that they come of age into or as a new citizen embrace. Our focus is making sure they know how to access that right and become informed and engaged citizens, because that's what makes democracy healthy.
You can absolutely assure the voters of this state that as long as they vote by the 3rd, through the 3rd, up until the deadline, that their vote will be counted, whether it's mail-in, it's voting in person, no matter what. You can absolutely guarantee that.
Yes, I mean, I am certain that even with record turnout, the results of our elections will be secure and an accurate reflection of the will of the people. But citizens can also track their ballots themselves if they vote through the mail at michigan.gov/vote, so that they can be given that extra assurance that their ballot was received and counted. And you can always also call your local clerk to confirm that as well. And then, of course, if you vote on election day, you'll see your ballot counted right then and there.
That was obviously an interview I did with the secretary a few days ago. I don't change clothes that fast. Next week on Inside Michigan's African American Vote, how are respected religious and community leaders getting out the vote during COVID-19? Believe me, it's a whole new world and a whole new way of campaigning. I'm Chuck Stokes. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.